What's up guys, I'm BTC. Not too long after the role queue system was added, there was a change with Reaper's Shadowstep, but it wasn't from Blizzard, and it's not what you think. The first thing I want to assure you is that this is not another video of me talking about how bad Shadowstep is. I think by now you guys are well aware of how I feel about the ability, so instead this video is more about showing you a better, more effective way of using Shadowstep. The funny thing about game design is often the developers will create an ability and want it to be used in a specific way, but sometimes the players will have other ideas, and they discover that if they use that ability in a different way than what the developers intended, it's actually better. Shadowstep is one of those such abilities where not using it how Blizzard wants you to is actually more effective. If you think about Shadowstep and how it gets used, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's probably a flanking strategy where the Reaper player will try to go off around the back of the map and try to sneak up on the enemy. They try to do this as quietly as they can, but there are some problems with that. There's a hidden cost when trying to use more elaborate flanking strategies. It is something that a lot of people don't really consider. In order to better understand how the ability is being used now and why it's better than it was before, we first need to look at how the ability was designed, what it was intended to be used for, and what eventually changed with it. So let's take a stroll down memory lane. Before we get started though, if you enjoy the content on this channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell, because YouTube has changed how their system works, and it now greatly favors the big name brand channels over the individual creators like me. So hit the bell, share the video, I would definitely appreciate it, and your other favorite YouTubers would appreciate it as well. A while back there was an interview with Jeff Goodman, who is one of the lead developers for Overwatch. The topic of Shadowstep came up, and he discussed how the dev team was looking at possible changes, but when asked more about it, he said something to the effect of, if you're looking for Reaper to get something like a Tracer Blink, then it's not going to happen. Now, I'm pretty certain that this was a response largely directed at me and a video that I had just recently put out. I just made a video talking about how terrible Shadowstep was and that it needed to be redesigned. The video had over 700,000 views at the time, pretty good chance the dev team saw it. My suggestion was to give Reaper a sort of leap ability that functioned as kind of a mix between Winston's leap and Genji's dash. I emphasized that it would have limited vertical mobility and that Reaper would be vulnerable during the movement animation, just like Winston and Genji are. I did suggest that there could be maybe partial damage resistance, but in absolutely no way did I say that it was going to be like a Tracer's Blink. I stressed that it would not be like a Tracer's Blink, that you could take damage during the movement. So I'm guessing he was probably aware of the video and maybe even watched a part of it, but probably didn't pay attention to what I was actually suggesting, just kind of skimmed over it. Now you might be thinking, why is any of this relevant? Well, the reason why I bring it up is because Blizzard wants Shadowstep to be used in a certain way to allow Reaper to flank around the map, and yet that is one of the least effective ways of actually using the character. If you watch any of the pro players that use Reaper, which you've been watching in some of the clips that I've been running already, you'll see that is not how those players are using Reaper. They're not using him as this big, super secret flanking character to go around the enemy. Instead, they're using him as a frontline character. After the role queue system was added and Goat's Comp was thrown out the window, Reaper's pick rate surged up to one of the most played characters in the entire game. Not just in lower bracket, but also in the upper bracket and the pro scene. But, despite this, almost no one was actually using Shadowstep. At the pro level, Shadowstep was used once every 4 minutes. Its most effective use at the time was to simply leave the spawn room a little bit faster. However, towards the end of last year's Overwatch League, Shadowstep started being used more often, but it was also being used in a completely different way than it had been before, and also differently than how Blizzard had intended. Shadowstep was essentially being used as a poor man's leap. It's not as good as an actual leap ability or a dash ability, mostly due to the troublesome and still partially broken targeting system it uses. A true leap ability would allow you to move instantly from just pressing the button, which is why I refer to Shadowstep as a poor man's leap. It does kinda do the same thing, it's just in a much more awkward way. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to turn this into a ha 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 I told you so kind of video. That's not the point here. I want to show you that there is a much better way to use Shadowstep effectively instead of the old traditional flanking way that a lot of players have been using it as. As you've been seeing with some of the clips in this video, the strategy now is rather than trying to go around and flank behind the enemy team, the basic strategy is that you wait until the fight begins and then Reaper will just Shadowstep right behind the enemy team. He will then try to do as much damage as he can, as quickly as he can, before then using Wraith form to escape back to safety with the rest of his team. Sometimes you can do a good amount of damage, other times they'll notice you quickly and you need to Wraith form out almost immediately. Now you might be asking, why is this more effective? Isn't the enemy team just gonna know that you're there right away? Shouldn't you be using Shadowstep in the traditional way and that Blizzard originally intended by sneaking around the enemy team and then not letting them know you're there right before you attack? If you use the Shadowstep to just go right behind them, then they're gonna know you're there. So why is it more effective? The number one reason is that staying with your team is almost always the most effective strategy in Overwatch, as opposed to going off on your own. The second reason is that when you go on these flanking missions, there is a hidden cost that I mentioned earlier, that a lot of players simply don't take into consideration. That cost is the amount of time that you lose while trying to set up this sort of stuff. When you're sneaking around, your team is fighting without you. Let me show you some typical examples of what you might see attacking point A on King's Row. So there are two different methods. There's the one where you just try to get in and fight as soon as possible, and this is what I just showed you with the Overwatch League and the upper bracket players, where you just teleport in, you try to get off a couple attacks, they might know that you're there right away, they might not. Chances are you can get off at least a few hits, and then you escape with Wraith form as soon as they start attacking you. You get back, you can heal up with your team, you get behind your tanks, and you can try again. Now, the other thing that you'll often see on the competitive ladder, particularly in the lower brackets, is they try to do these really long flanking missions. Now, in order to get over there, you can try to get up top here, but they're going to see you. If you try to teleport right here, they're going to see you because the Reaper Shadowstep is really bright, it's loud, they're gonna know you're there. So you're not gonna be able to sneak in around here. If you try to go over here, they're gonna know you're there, they're gonna look at you, they're gonna be able to attack you, and your whole kind of surprise flanking mission doesn't do anything. And now, look at how far away you are. If you try to Wraith form out of here, well, you're not gonna make it far enough, and chances are you're gonna get taken out. Now, another method would be to go up here, but again, same situation, right? They know you're here. They're going to be able to see you. You can try going into the building or up on top, it doesn't matter, they're gonna know you're there, and the entire stealth of your mission has now been removed. You could do the same thing if you go over there. So, what you'll often see, again, particularly in the lower bracket, is, but not uncommon, it does happen in the upper bracket as well, and I do want to point out that there are reasons why you would want to do this, okay? There are specific cases why you would want to do this. But the point that I'm making here is that it is massively, massively overused. So you could come over here, right? If they have a Widow or something, then there's still a chance that they could see you here. And you can come over here, and then you can teleport down into the building. If you do this, they're not going to know you're here. So you can sneak around to the backside, and you can then attack them over here, and then you can Wraith form out once they start to attack you. But look at how long that took. Let me show you a comparison side by side of how long it actually takes for just doing this and attacking versus trying to do the whole flanking route thing.
Repositioning.
Now, of course, there are more paths to take than just those. Rather than going into the doorway, you could try to teleport up top. But if you do that, even if you try to move it as far into the corner as you can, there's still a pretty good chance that someone's going to see you. And if you go into the bottom and you run up the stairs, again, there's a chance that somebody's going to see you over there. Or when you're running over here, there's a chance that someone's going to see you. So yeah, you can come over here and try to drop down, and then you attack here. But by the time you actually drop down and do that, there's a really good chance that the enemy has already seen you over there, or maybe they even heard your footsteps up there. So if that's the case, if they already know that you're there, why didn't you just teleport to here in the first place, right? Save yourself all of that extra time. Just teleport here, attack the enemies, and then Wraith form out. Keep in mind though, it's not just your time that you're wasting, because the entire duration where you are trying to do this super secret mission where you're going through the buildings, where you're going around to the back and stuff, your team is effectively fighting a 5 versus 6 because you are not there. You are kind of off doing your own thing. And this is one of the reasons why you see the upper bracket players and the pro players, they always stay together. Now, if you have time, if you're waiting for your team to respawn or something like that, then yes, you can kind of put yourself into these situations. But if your team has just started the engagement right here, you've got a Reinhardt or a Zarya or something, and they're moving forward, and in the meantime, you're doing this super complicated flanking mission where you're trying to go all the way around it, where your team is now fighting for that entire duration, and you're not there. This is the hidden cost of flanking that a lot of people just don't take into consideration. I hope now you have a better understanding of the hidden cost of these longer flanking routes. That's not to say you should never do it. There are definitely going to be cases where you should, but it is more the exception rather than the norm. Keep in mind, when you're spending 15, 20, 30 seconds doing these long flanking routes, that is when your team is effectively fighting a 5 versus 6 because you are not participating. And by the time you actually get into position, then the fight may be over, or it may already have been lost where your team took too many losses and you need to just kind of retreat anyways. Or maybe the fight is still going on and you manage to get there, but then you immediately get spotted or taken out, or it just doesn't work. Then how much time have you lost? You lost the 30 seconds to go around there. You lose another 12 or 15 seconds to respawn. That is a huge amount of time, particularly when the attacking round is only a couple minutes long. So you use up almost a third of your time for just one of these flanking missions. And most of the time, it's not going to be worth it. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like to see more, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to get notified. You can get some cool gear, join my Discord server, or follow me on social media with the links down in the description below. Special thanks to my Patreon supporters, and remember, always blame the controller because it's never your fault.